Stop for a second and pay attention, because what is about to move through your life in the next 24 hours is not subtle. It is not accidental, and it is not something most people are even aware enough to recognize, and that alone is why it matters so much. Because while others drift through this moment unconsciously, you are being positioned to receive something that has been building behind the scenes for far longer than you think. And as Tuesday, May 5th arrives, and the moon steps into Capricorn, this is not just another routine shift in the sky. This is a recalibration point, a moment where the invisible scales begin correcting themselves, where everything you carried, every line you refused to let be crossed, every decision that cost you comfort but protected your truth during the chaos of April begins to translate into something measurable, something real. And here is where most people misunderstand what is happening. Because they expect reward to look like luck, like sudden blessings falling out of nowhere. But that is not the nature of this moment. This is Saturn's territory, and Saturn operates on precision, on accountability, on cause and effect. Meaning, what is coming toward you today is not a gift. It is a return. It is the exact reflection of the discipline you held when it would have been easier to quit, the courage you accessed when fear was louder than your logic, and the quiet resilience you demonstrated when everything around you seemed to be collapsing. And if recently you have felt this strange tension building inside you, like something significant is about to shift, but you cannot fully explain why that feeling is not random. It has a source, it has a reason, and it has been forming over time. And I will break that down for you as we move forward, so stay with me. But first, you need to understand something that changes the way you interpret this entire moment. The effort has already happened. The challenge has already been faced. The evaluation is already complete, and what today represents is the reveal. April was not just difficult. It was transformative in a way that forced you into corners where you had no option but to respond differently than before. It was pressure that exposed your limits and then demanded you move beyond them. And if you felt stretched, overwhelmed, pushed into decisions that felt too heavy or too final, that was not your imagination. That was the direct result of Mars entering Aries on April 9th, initiating a chain reaction of planetary intensity that kept escalating, and then everything reached a peak between April 19th and April 20th, when Mars and Saturn came together in Aries while Mercury moved through at the same time, creating a collision between raw force and immovable structure. And those days were not passive. They required action. They required you to choose. Maybe you had to stand firm when your instinct was to escape. Maybe you had to say something you had been suppressing for years. Maybe you had to define a boundary that made you uncomfortable simply because it was necessary. Or maybe for the first time, you chose yourself in a situation where you had always been expected to give everything away. Whatever form it took, you did not avoid it. You faced it. And that is exactly what this Capricorn moon is responding to, because Capricorn does not respond to ideas. It responds to execution. It does not reward what you planned, it rewards what you built. It recognizes structure, consistency, and tangible effort. And if you were one of the few who continued moving forward while everything felt unstable, then what is arriving now is something you can hold on to, something that reflects reality rather than possibility. And as today unfolds and the moon crosses fully into Capricorn, there is a moment, a precise internal shift where something aligns. And you may not notice it immediately, because it does not come with noise. It comes with grounding, with a sense of stability replacing uncertainty, with a realization that despite everything you made it through, and that realization carries weight. But that is only part of what is happening, because the energy surrounding this day is not calm. It is charged. It is active. It is pushing you. And that intensity began just hours before with Mars forming a square to Jupiter on May 4th, creating an almost restless urgency, a pressure to act, to expand, to move forward even if you do not feel fully ready. It is like being positioned at the edge of something with no option, but to step into it. And then, on May 5th itself, Mercury forms a square to Pluto, and this is where the mental landscape transforms, where truth becomes unavoidable, where the narratives you have been telling yourself are stripped down until only what is real remains. And yes, this can feel uncomfortable. It can feel confronting. But it is also what allows you to finally see clearly enough to recognize what you have earned and to claim it without hesitation, without minimizing it, without questioning whether you deserve it, because this moment is not asking for doubt. It is asking for recognition, and as this realization settles in something else, begins to open, leading directly into what comes next. Listen carefully, because this is the part almost no one explains correctly. These intense angles you are feeling right now are not here to block your path or slow you down. They are the final checkpoint, the last moment where everything you have learned is being reflected back to you. And if you truly faced what April demanded of you, then deep down you already know exactly how to move. Even if your mind is still trying to catch up, and that sensation you have been carrying, that strange pressure mixed with anticipation that is not fear, and it is not instability. It is recognition happening before the physical evidence arrives, because for days now, maybe even longer, something inside you has been adjusting, and you may have noticed it in subtle ways. A restlessness that does not quite make sense. A shift in your sleep patterns, moments where your attention drifts, and you feel like you are standing at the edge of something significant, but cannot fully define it yet. And instead of dismissing it or trying to explain it away, understand what it actually is. Your system is recalibrating, your entire internal structure is preparing to hold a different level of reality. Because this Capricorn Moon does not only change what happens around you, it changes who you are capable of being within it, meaning today is not just about receiving something external. It is about stepping into a version of yourself that has the capacity to hold more, to speak with certainty, to occupy space without hesitation. And your body senses that shift before your mind can label it. That is why the feeling comes first, because energetically you are already expanding to match what is about to enter your life. And here is something even more important. Not everyone is experiencing this. Not everyone is being prepared in this way, because only those who actually met the demands of April are feeling this internal activation. So if this is resonating with you, if you recognize this build-up inside your own experience, then take that as confirmation. You are not imagining it. You are responding to something real. And while most people focus only on what they can physically gain from a moment like this, the promotion, the money, the relationship shift, the sudden opportunity that seems to come out of nowhere, there is another layer that carries even more impact, and that is authority. Not the kind you try to prove or convince others of, but the kind that is simply present, the kind that changes the way you move, the way you decide, the way people respond to you without you having to explain anything. And today, that shift begins to anchor itself. You will notice it in quiet interactions, in moments that seem small on the surface, but carry a different weight. Someone listens when you speak, instead of overlooking you. You make a decision, and do not spend the next 3 days questioning it. You draw a line, and do not immediately feel the need to apologize for it. And what is happening in those moments is the release of a pattern that has been limiting you for far longer than you realized. The voice that once asked you who you thought you were begins to lose its influence. Because after everything you have moved through, there is no longer a question of identity. There is recognition. And once that internal alignment locks into place, everything outside of you starts responding differently. Because opportunities do not appear for people who are still waiting to feel ready, they appear for people who have already stepped into that readiness. And that is what today is doing. It is shifting you into that state, whether you consciously acknowledge it or not. And this is where the energy from May 4th becomes crucial, because just before this moment fully unfolds, Mars forms a square to Jupiter. And that energy is intense. It is activating every part of you that wants to expand, to take action, to move beyond the limitations you have been operating within. It can feel overwhelming, like an internal push that will not let you stay where you are, and that is exactly its purpose. Because if you arrive at this Capricorn moment, still thinking small, still minimizing what you have earned, still preparing yourself to accept less than what is available, you will not recognize the scale of what is being offered to you. And this Mars-Jupiter dynamic is designed to break that pattern. It introduces a level of boldness that feels almost unfamiliar, a willingness to step forward without shrinking yourself, a refusal to reduce your expectations just to stay comfortable. And yes, if you do not direct this energy consciously, it can scatter you. It can lead to overextension or impulsive choices that do not align with your long-term path. But when you ground it, when you channel it with intention, it becomes something entirely different. It becomes momentum with direction. It becomes the force that allows you not only to receive what is coming, but to actively claim it. Because this moment is not passive. It is not about waiting to see what happens. It is about recognizing what is already yours and stepping forward to take your place within it. And as that realization settles deeper, it naturally opens the next layer of what this shift is leading you toward. There is a point in this entire sequence that changes everything, and most people miss it because they are too focused on what they hope will happen instead of what is actually being revealed. And that point is this: the pressure you are feeling right now is not random. It is designed to push you beyond the limits you once accepted as fixed, because, as Mars forms that tense angle with Jupiter, something inside you refuses to stay small any longer. It challenges the invisible ceiling you have been living under. It questions every moment you settled for less than what you knew you were capable of holding. And this is where courage is not something you think about. It is something that rises without asking for permission. It is the quiet but undeniable voice that tells you that what you once believed was too much for you is now exactly what you are meant to reach for. And as that expansion builds, as that internal fire continues to rise, another force steps in on May 5th. And this is where everything becomes undeniable, because on the same day the Moon moves into Capricorn, Mercury forms a square to Pluto. And this is not a gentle realization. This is not a soft awareness that you can ignore or reinterpret. This is the moment where truth removes every layer of illusion you have been using to stay comfortable. Mercury represents the way you think, the way you process, the way you communicate with yourself and with others, while Pluto operates beneath the surface, governing what is hidden, what is unspoken, what holds real power behind appearances. And when these two collide, there is no space left for denial. No room to hide behind old stories. Everything becomes clear in a way that cannot be reversed. And for some of you, this clarity may feel heavy at first, because it might reveal that something you have been trying to preserve has already ended in all the ways that matter. It might show you that a situation you thought was stable is actually limiting your growth. It might expose that what you have been calling protection is actually a pattern that has been keeping you trapped. And that realization can feel uncomfortable, even confronting. But here is the part that changes how you interpret it. This truth does not arrive randomly. It arrives at the exact moment you are strong enough to face it without collapsing. Because this aspect is not here to take something from you, it is here to remove what no longer aligns, so you can finally move forward without carrying what was never meant to stay. And the reason this matters so much today is because you cannot step into what you have earned while still holding on to what is no longer real. The illusion has to dissolve before the reward can fully land. And once you see that truth, once you allow yourself to fully recognize it, there is no returning to the version of you that accepted less clarity. There is no going back to the comfort of not knowing. There is only forward movement. And that is exactly the direction this Capricorn energy is guiding you toward. But before that reward fully stabilizes, there is something Capricorn requires, something that cannot be bypassed or negotiated, and that is accountability. Because Capricorn does not respond to intentions, it responds to evidence. It does not measure what you wanted to do, it measures what you actually followed through on, and many people misunderstand this, thinking they need to be perfect to receive anything from this energy, but perfection is not the standard here. Consistency is endurance, is the willingness to continue when the outcome was uncertain is. And so the real questions being asked are simple but powerful. Did you continue showing up when it became uncomfortable? Did you keep building when everything you created seemed to fall apart? Did you choose integrity even when cutting corners would have been easier? Did you take responsibility when it would have been easier to deflect or blame? And if your answer to those questions is yes, then understand something clearly. You have already aligned with what this moment is rewarding. Saturn recognizes that effort. It acknowledges that persistence, and today it responds. But if someone has been avoiding that work, if they have been expecting results without the foundation to support them, then this same energy will feel very different, because Capricorn does not only reward it, reveals, it shows what is solid and what is not, what has been built with intention, and what has been constructed as an appearance. And this is not meant to create fear. It is meant to create awareness, because if you know the work was real, if you know you stayed committed even when it would have been easier to walk away, then what arrives today is not surprising. It is confirmation, and here is where something deeper begins to unfold. Because the way this reward appears is not random. It is precise in a way that reflects exactly where you were tested the most if you felt pressure around your resources. If you questioned whether you would have enough to sustain yourself, that is where stability begins to show up. If you felt isolated, if you carried something alone without support, that is where connection begins to enter. If you doubted your direction, if you questioned whether your path made sense, that is where clarity and confirmation begin to solidify. And this is not coincidence. This is alignment, because the universe does not respond in general terms. It responds in exact reflection to where you were stretched, where you were uncertain, where you almost reached your limit, but chose to continue anyway. And this is where that deeper transformation takes place, where what once felt like your weakest point becomes the place where your strength is most visible, where what once felt like vulnerability becomes the source of your power. And as this realization settles, as you begin to see how precisely everything is unfolding, it naturally leads into the next layer of understanding, because this shift is not only collective, it is also personal. And the way it activates your life specifically is tied directly to your own chart, which is where everything becomes even more defined. There is a level to this moment that most people never reach, not because it is hidden from them, but because they never pause long enough to understand how precisely everything is aligning in their favor. And what determines the form your reward takes is not random chance. It is the exact point where this Capricorn Moon activates your personal chart, because that is where the compensation you earned begins to materialize. And when you start to see it through that lens, everything becomes more intentional, more targeted, more undeniable. So if you are Aries, this energy moves directly into your career and public identity. And if you truly stood firm during April, when pressure was aimed directly at you, when your sense of direction was tested and your confidence challenged, then what unfolds now is elevation that cannot be ignored. Recognition that reflects not just your effort, but your authority. The kind that shifts how others see you and how you see yourself in professional spaces. And if you are Taurus, this activation reaches into your beliefs, your knowledge, your long-term vision, and everything you have been developing intellectually or philosophically begins to solidify into something tangible, whether that is an opportunity to share your voice on a larger platform, to teach, to publish, or to finally understand your path in a way that removes all doubt. And for Gemini, this movement goes deeper into shared resources, financial exchanges, and emotional intimacy. And if you have been doing the internal work confronting patterns, addressing what lies beneath the surface, then what stabilizes now is not only your emotional connections, but also the material support tied to them. Partnerships that begin to return value in ways you can measure. And for Cancer, this is about relationships in their most defining form. Contracts, commitments, and the agreements that shape your life, and the boundaries you had to enforce in April, even when they felt uncomfortable or final, now translate into clarity, either through solid commitments that align with your truth, or through endings that create space for something far more stable. And if you are Leo, this energy moves through your daily systems, your health, your routines, the structure of your work, and everything you disciplined yourself to maintain when it felt repetitive or exhausting now clicks into place, giving you not only energy, but efficiency. A sense that your efforts are finally working with you instead of against you. And for Virgo, this activation touches your creativity, your joy, your expressions of love and passion. And what once felt like effort or dedication without immediate return begins to transform into something real, creative work, becoming income connections deepening into commitment, something that carries both meaning and stability. And for Libra, this reaches into your home, your emotional foundation, your private world, and the work you did behind the scenes. The emotional processing, the quiet rebuilding. The effort no one else saw now results in something concrete, a sense of security that cannot be shaken, a resolution within family dynamics, or even a physical change in your living situation that reflects that stability. And for Scorpio, this energy amplifies your voice, your ideas, the way you communicate and influence your immediate environment. And the research you have done, the boundaries you have established in conversations now, lead to a breakthrough, a moment where what you say carries weight, where your perspective is recognized as authoritative. And for Sagittarius, this becomes very tangible in your resources, your income, your sense of worth, and the discipline you maintained around your finances, even when it required restraint, now begins to pay off in direct ways, whether through increased income, successful investments, or new streams of revenue that feel stable and sustainable. And for Capricorn, this is personal in the deepest sense because this moon moves through your identity itself, reshaping how you see who you are and how others respond to your presence. Everything you rebuilt internally now reflects outwardly, creating a version of you that embodies the power you earned rather than questioning it. And for Aquarius, this energy moves into your inner world, your subconscious patterns, your spiritual practice, and the work you have done to understand yourself on a deeper level now results in a breakthrough that dissolves limitations you may have carried for years, freeing you from cycles that once felt permanent. And for Pisces, this activates your community, your network, your long-term goals, and the relationships you have invested in, the collaborations you have nurtured now begin to return value, whether through group success, shared achievements, or the arrival of someone who opens a door that leads directly into your future. And as all of this unfolds, there is another layer that intensifies everything you are experiencing, because Saturn, the ruler of Capricorn, is currently in Aries, and this placement is not comfortable. It forces discipline into a space that prefers speed. It demands patience in an environment that thrives on impulse. It requires structure, where there is a tendency toward immediate action, and this tension creates something powerful. It produces a form of strength that cannot be given, only earned. Independence, that comes from having no choice but to rely on yourself. Authority that is built through experience rather than granted by external validation. And because this Capricorn Moon answers to that version of Saturn, what you are receiving today is directly tied to moments where you acted without waiting, where you stepped forward without permission, where you chose responsibility even when it felt overwhelming. And this means the universe is not rewarding conformity. It is rewarding those who created their own path, those who built something without a guide, those who trusted themselves when there was no external confirmation to rely on. And if that reflects your journey, then what arrives now is not just reward, it is validation of everything you have been becoming. And with that understanding, there is one final piece that determines how fully you receive what is here for you. Because, while you cannot control the timing of this moment, you can absolutely influence how you meet it. And that begins with a level of clarity that most people avoid, but that you are now ready to step into. Pause here, because this final piece is where everything either locks into place or slips through your hands without you even realizing it. And the difference comes down to one thing that most people avoid confronting honestly. You have to get clear on what you truly want. Not what sounds impressive, not what would make other people approve of you, not what you think you are supposed to aim for, but what actually resonates with you at your core. Because the energy moving through today does not respond to vague desire. It responds to precision. It responds to clarity. It meets you exactly where you are willing to define your direction. And if you are honest with yourself, you already know that there have been moments where you softened your own vision just to make it more acceptable, where you reduced your expectations because you were afraid of what it would mean to fully claim them. And this is the moment where that pattern has to end. Because the second step in receiving what is here for you is releasing the weight of guilt that may still be attached to wanting more. Wanting more does not make you ungrateful. It does not make you selfish. It means you recognize your capacity, and Capricorn energy respects that Saturn acknowledges those who aim higher even when it feels uncomfortable to admit it. So this is not the day to shrink yourself or to settle for what feels safe. This is the day to stand fully in what you have been building toward without apology. And from there, the third layer becomes clear. You have to trust what you have already created, even if you cannot yet see the entire structure. Because what was built in April was not fragile. It was tested under pressure. It was formed in conditions that would have broken something weaker, and what today begins to show you is not something new. It is the strength of what already exists. And that realization can feel unfamiliar because it requires you to stop questioning the foundation you have laid. It requires you to acknowledge that what you built is solid even if it does not yet look complete. And then comes the most important shift, the one that determines whether you fully step into this moment or unconsciously push it away. You have to allow yourself to receive without immediately diminishing what arrives. Because there is a pattern many people fall into, where the moment something good enters their life, their first reaction is to explain it away, to downplay it, to convince themselves it is not that significant, or that they somehow do not deserve it. And if you do that today, you interrupt the very flow that is trying to elevate you. So, when the reward shows up, in whatever form it takes you, do not deflect it. You do not question it. You accept it fully. You recognize it as yours because it is not accidental. It is the direct result of who you chose to become. And at the same time, you need to understand that not every outcome will appear instantly. Some things will manifest immediately, others will begin unfolding over the next several days. And some will plant themselves quietly now, only to reveal their full impact as time moves forward, especially as larger shifts continue to build into the coming month, and trusting that timing is part of this process. Because what today represents is not just a single event, it is a turning point. A moment where your entire trajectory begins to shift, where what once felt blocked starts to open, where what once seemed distant begins to move within reach. And the most profound part of all of this is not just what you receive externally, it is what becomes undeniable internally. Because the version of you that you have been working toward is no longer something in the future. It is something you are already stepping into now. And that is what earned rewards do. They do not simply give you something new. They confirm that you have already transformed into someone capable of holding it, and that confirmation changes everything, Because once you truly recognize your own capability, once you feel that grounded certainty that you are no longer guessing or hoping, but knowing that you are aligned, powerful, and exactly where you need to be, there is nothing left that can limit your direction. The external results are meaningful. The financial shifts, the recognition, the commitments, the opportunities, all of those matter. But they are not the core of what is happening here. The real shift is in your foundation, in how you see yourself, in the removal of doubt that once held you back. Because today marks the point where you stop questioning whether you are enough and begin operating from the understanding that you already are. And once that awareness stabilizes, there is no ceiling to what you can move into. Next, everything expands from that place. Everything grows from that certainty. And as this moment completes itself, understand what has just taken place. The balance has been restored. The cycle has been accounted for. And what you receive now is not based on luck or chance, but on the depth of effort, the discipline, the resilience, and the transformation you carried through. And that is why it holds weight. That is why it lasts, because it is built on something real. And if you have stayed present through this entire message, take that as a sign in itself. Because awareness is part of alignment, and if this resonated with you, if you felt yourself within these words, then stay connected. Continue. Engaging. Share what you are experiencing. Because your journey is part of this unfolding. And as you move forward from here, carry this knowing with you. Take care of yourself. Stay aligned with what is real, and continue stepping into everything you have already earned.